company, specifically our cultivation director, is just a long-time servant of interesting botany and caring about the cannabis plant in a way that I've never met anyone else who's quite like him. But that's going to be, I think, what underpins our whole product strategy, is that we think cannabis chemistries, cannabis flavor profiles, they're really, really beautiful and interesting. And we can continue to explore that, hopefully for decades to come. And so when you see value added offerings from Tantalus Labs, maybe like a beautiful blonde hash, there's a lot of great hash makers that we'll be collaborating with more and more over time. Rosin products in the concentrate category, those are going to be hopefully great representations of that cannabis plant at its most perfect. It doesn't really need to be chopped up and reconstituted in our mind. A beautiful Blue Dream makes for a fantastic hash input. And so we can just kind of keep on that agriculturally focused path in those categories. I really like...
I have my mouth watering because you said blonde hash. I haven't had blonde hash since I lived in Switzerland in like 92. So that's super amazing. We don't hear a lot of people talking about hash. And I, as I said, I'm from Ontario, where you often would get the Montreal black hash that would come in and a lot of the great Moroccan hash, and would rarely see flower back in the day when I was growing up. But it's really exciting to hear you speak of have hash this way. I haven't had any other producer. They want to talk about oils and everything else, but this is exciting.
Hey, I'm glad to hear it. And you're someone who cares deeply about cannabis. And so if we're exciting you, we're probably on the right track. I mean, I don't think the hash market is massive, but that's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to do stuff that's worth telling a story about and that's interesting and that's, compelling an excitable user base. But we'll also be in convenience oriented categories. Like I think the vaporization market's really exciting because now you get a chance to take a cannabis experience that is to varying degrees, of quality, and then be able to deliver it in that convenient form factor. I think what you'll see in Tantalus Labs' vaporization strategy is that we're really going to try to emulate the natural chemistry of our plants in a single origin way. So much the same way, if we're making hash, we're not going to lump a bunch of different cultivars together and then sift it. We're going to take, just a Blue Dream, like just a flash frozen skunk haze, or something that is representative of the same product experiences people have been anticipating from our flower, and then get it to people in a hash format. I think we're going to try to do as close to the same thing as we can with vaporizers, acknowledging that technology continues to evolve and iterate, and without like an exceptional supply chain of partners, we wouldn't be able to do it anyway. But I would love it if I could just have a little rechargeable, non-disposable pod-based system where I could take a light puff of some of my favorite Tantalus strains and then be able to put it away again without smelling like weed or having to step outside or what have you. So I think that's going to be super fun, and technology is going to really change the way a lot of people consume cannabis, even though I myself might always be a guy who likes to bust up a joint and roll it with my hands.
And so when you spoke earlier in regards to I think basically I'm paraphrasing what you were talking about, basically terpene profile, would you be looking to enhance that with the vape offerings in the future as well?
I think my favorite strategy around it, like I know that you can use exogenous terpenes, but then you start to run into this kind of almost flavoring type of category. I've always seen distillate plus flavor as... Which
is illegal, right? You're not allowed to add... The Cannabis Act basically states you can't add any flavor or fragrance. So I was just curious if you would be wanting to work in your genetics to kind of build up a terpene profile to be able to enhance that.
Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, terpenous cannabis is exciting in flower format. Terpenous cannabis is exciting in oil format, as long as it's carefully processed in a way that preserves that flavor profile. But I mean, I am so excited for what's going on genetically. I think, around the world, in California for sure, and then also with a lot of interesting breeding going on in BC, that is now focused more and more on flavor as the core of sort of the brand offering. I think it's unfortunate that so much exceptionally flavorful cannabis happens to be really high THC cannabis, because that's alienating a big swath of the user base when you get into those kind of, even the low 20s, but mid 20s, so Kush derived and cookies derived strains. Like those are super exciting. And I think they've got, obviously a massive following in the marketplace, but terpenous cannabis is such a better story for me because it's about flavor, and that flavor if it's an exotic phenotype, is very hard to emulate. So regardless of the potency level, which I know today is a massive driver of purchase decisions, and a lot of people, still will go in and ask, just give me the hardest hitting stuff you have. I'd love to see the flavors that are present in some of those, exotic high THC strains also available in CBD strains and in balanced strains. And I think hopefully you're going to see more and more of that from Tantalus Labs. It just takes us a long time to get those products stable. If you want to take a seed run and select a phenotype and stabilize it for disease resistance and grow it in a greenhouse so you can deliver consistent chemistries and consistent harvests every time, that could be 18 to 20 months just to get that rocking. It is for us anyway. Maybe we take our time a little bit, but no, man, terpenes are an exciting prospect and are going to be evolving a lot over the next couple of years.
I honestly see them to be the future. I just, even from a topical perspective, I love to marry the terpenes in the cannabis to different other terpenes available in essential oils for that optimal effect. It's just fascinates me that cannabis is such a beautiful adaptogen. And when you compare it with other plants with the same the same terpene profile, then you really are able to amp up the wonderful benefits from both of those plants, or the triage or whatever kind of putting together with them. So I
defer to you. I defer to you on topics of this nature. You know a lot more about that stuff than I do, but I know enough to know that it's super exciting to see beautiful flowers with interesting compounds in them. So maybe we'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. And so I'm curious with your vape, like are you looking to go CO2 extracted? Are you looking at different approaches? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we're evaluating a bunch of different extraction technologies and vape filling stuff, with partners, without partners, independently, doing our research as much as we can.
And you play your own guinea pig.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I will make a point of going to legal jurisdictions in the States where I can test out some of the products that are leading in the marketplace down there and sort of see what strategies they've taken. It's kind of a mixed bag, and I don't think we have a definitive strategy yet. We've seen, when you do propane-based or BHO-based extraction in a laboratory environment and you are effectively purging it and you are, creating a product that doesn't have any, adulterants from its processing protocol, then you can get some really great flavor profiles using that technology. I think like terpene only runs and then CO2 extraction, supercritical or subcritical, can yield great results. Oftentimes it seems to depend on the operator of those pieces of infrastructure. And I don't know. I mean, I have some people that champion ethanol to still be able to maintain an ongoing flavor process. I don't really understand how that works because I've never seen any ethanol processed cannabis that was particularly flavorful in its distillate. But we'll sort of see how it all goes. And I think whatever happens on day one when we launch a product is inevitably going to iterate. I think that it's a big nut to crack to get some solventless extracts into a pen. I understand there's been people that have been doing that and a pen that you can then reuse. Like you don't have to fill it every time you use it. Right. And if and when that really becomes a practical reality, which is difficult because of viscosity and other things that I'm sure the vape pen nerds in your audience will be excited by. When it does get figured out, then you're actually able to get someone essentially a plant-only solventless extraction input. And to me, that's what really excites me. I don't know. I hope that happens in the next few years.
I'm not as well versed in the vape pens. I have a few colleagues who that's kind of their wheelhouse. So I really enjoy kind of cozying up to them for their conversations and learn kind of just by osmosis and by listening and like really paying attention to what they have to say. But it's been interesting to see the differences of the pens and how they're kind of coming to the market and how they're evolving, and to even see how CBD is being utilized in that way. And I think it's a little bit more picky when it's on its own. It tends to crystallize. It doesn't like the cold so much. So I'm really curious to see what the R&D will bring as we iterate as a community. So can I come back and ask more on the topical side and what you might have coming down the pipe in that regard?
Well, it's a good thing you asked because we are light on topical strategy right now. We've been really focused on the sort of few things where we think we can make a really differentiated impact with our full flower inputs. And so we need some advice. We've got to figure out how we approach the topicals market, how we approach the supply chain for topicals. But it's something we're more and more excited by. And, for me, topicals outside of cannabis topicals, even down to soap, is like not something that I'm very educated on or hyper creative on in my life. And it's because I'm a dude who keeps very good hygiene standards, but isn't doing a whole lot of moisturizing or bath bombs or other really interesting stuff. And maybe that's the real answer to this. I think that is a marketplace that is likely going to draw a lot of female consumer interest. I think there's going to be a lot of lady entrepreneurs that are absolutely like bang on with being able to create products that really excite people of their same community and of their same preferences. And so I think that as Tantalus Labs goes down the path on that more and more, maybe it won't be a day one product for us, but we always want to touch consumers wherever they live. It'd be a really cool chance to empower a group of female entrepreneurs who could build something that we can then facilitate their supply chain and distribution and things like that. And more, I think that Tantalus Labs is interested in getting more bright minds in the camp. You know, we can't do everything ourselves. We're not really interested in a massively vertically integrated, multi-thousand employee enterprise. We want to get cool relationships built where we can actually empower other people that own equity in their own stories. And if that could be a group of inspired young women, that'd be even better.
That really excites me. I mean, one of the reasons why I built Blissful Alchemy was not only because topicals all of a sudden became officially illegal to sell and I can no longer be in my past position, but it was also that I felt there was a real lack of community, like a place for community to come together. And often, when I had done a little bit of work with CannaReps, it was always like, where are we going to do this? Where are we going to do this? And so space always seemed to be a challenge. And I knew all of these women who were kind of trying to create their businesses who didn't have a location. So I was like, okay, if I find the location and I provide a platform for other women to kind of build up their businesses, be it education and yoga with cannabis, being a nutritionist or whatever, or doing their guided meditations, like however I could help them by facilitating what they want to do by providing a space so a community could come together. I thought that was the way to go. Like I can't do it all. So I'd rather just, in the film community, we always say like level up, hire above you. Like you don't hire somebody less than you. You try to hire somebody better than you so they make you look good. And so I think that's really wonderful to hear. I think I see some of the companies out there and they're kind of wanting to be the top at everything. I think then it just tends to water down the brand and they're spreading themselves thin if they don't have maybe the right leader in that department, so to speak. So, I mean, I think it's interesting. I was talking to somebody from HuffPost the other day and they were really clear of like, they wanted me to help them go through what was legal and what was not legal, because right now a lot of people are saying CBD is legal and they can use it. And there's a lot of misinformation in the marketplace right now. And so I'm curious as how that will hinder and how that will hamper and how it will also help other people with their businesses, because we are in such a time of transition and change and not everybody actually really knows or understands what the rules are or that those rules even existed, So I'm really curious to see what, I know everybody's like, oh, by the 17th of October, both, topicals and edibles will be legal and they'll be in the marketplace. And I just think that's so remiss. When I spoke to the women from HuffPost, I said, today's April Fool's and this is the day when you can actually get cannabis in Ontario, but legalization happened on the 17th of October last year. So it's taken almost like 6+ months for this to happen. So I'm just curious to see who will roll out what and when in the second tier of legalization or regulation, as I like to call it. Are you playing in the edible? Are you doing R&D in the edible world? Or are you also going to kind of create some space for other people to take that on first?
Yeah, so we're looking at it thoroughly, obviously, and it's interesting. I think that Tantalus hasn't been as bullish on edibles because our general perception was, at least from a cannabis inputs perspective, it's a lot more commodified. Like, 90% of the edibles products that I've ever seen in the States are THC isolate that's been decarboxylated, infused into X candy, gummy, brownie, drink, etc. And so because there are so many producers with massive supply chain advantages when it comes to creating THC isolate. We said, look, that's going to be a hard place for us to win. I think there still will be people that win on brand. Even if you had like a beautiful artisan chocolate offering that had THC in isolate as an input, there's still a deeper brand story there.